Hi, chat. How are we doing? Okay, the echo should be good. It should be gone now. Um, okay. So, today we're going to be reading Greek myths, I guess. Um, not sure which ones yet. The book I'm reading from is a Greek Myths and Legends Osborne illustrated guide to. So that's fun. Um, and I'm also gonna just use this for reminders, really. But yeah. Dara was saying 1 sec. If you're waiting. We are changing the game that Arrow's playing. I'm just like a random narrator. Look at him go. Okay. Well, I guess we'll start at the beginning, because it's always good. Start at the beginning. So the Croatian myth, which is always fun. Um, yeah. So before anything existed, there was a dark nothingness called chaos. That's fun. Gradually, the shape of Mother Earth emerged from the emptiness of the world. They don't name her here, but her name was Gaia. Um, so yeah, Mother Earth's children. Mother Earth produced a son, Uranus, who was this guy. Then they had one children together. Oh yeah, Greek myths do that a lot. If you didn't know, um, that just happens. So don't worry about it. um, Rain fell from the sky and onto earth, making the plants grow and the animals appear from rivers and seas. Next, many strangely shaped monsters and giants were born. Among these were the three who each had only one huge eye in the middle of their forehead and were called the Cyclopses, meaning wheeled eye. Ouranos treated them cruelly and banished them to the underworld. Later, some more human-shaped giants called Titans were born and became the first gods and goddesses. So Cyclopses and Titans were then created and born. Um, yeah. Mother Earth could not forgive Uranus for his treatment of her firstborn children and encouraged the Titans, led by Kronos, to rebel. He attacked and overcame Uranus with a sickle and took power. 3 drops of Uranus's blood fell on the earth and formed the Irenes. I can never say this name. Adonis or the Furies. These were spirits of revenge, with dogs' heads and bat wings. They hound murderers, especially those who killed relatives. Another drop fell into the sea, creating the foam from which the goddess Aphrodite was born. So, basically, Kronos attacked Uranus and overtook him and became the new lord of the earth. Kronos married his sister Rhea and became the king of the Titans. They had 5 children, but Kronos had been warned that one of them would kill him, so he swallowed each one as it was born. To save her 6th child, Rhea tricked Kronos into swallowing a stone and wrapped it in baby's clothes to hide the real child among some lesser goddesses called nymphs, who brought him up safely. This child was Zeus. So that's how Zeus is born. I think we all know who Zeus is. When he grew up, Zeus returned home in disguise and slipped a potion into Cronus' drink, making him choke. The children that he had swallowed were coughed out, whole and safe. There were his daughters, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera, and his sons, Hades and Poseidon. A fierce battle then took place. Zeus freed the Cyclopses, who made thunderbolts for him to hurl. They also made a forked trident for Poseidon and a helmet that made its wearer invisible for Hades. Most of the Titans and giants sided with Kronos. After the terrible struggle, the younger gods, or new gods, were victorious. The Titans were banished, and one of them, called Atlas, was made to hold up the heavens as punishment. Zeus became the ruler of the skies and the king of all gods. Poseidon was made king of the ocean, and Pluto, the Hades, lord of the underworld. In this book, they call Hades Pluto, which is his Roman. I don't know why they do that, but they do. So that's the Croatian myth. I guess now we can talk about Aphrodite? Question mark? Sure. So, the goddess Aphrodite was born in the most unusual way. When Ouranos was defeated by the new gods, one drop of blood from his wounds fell into the ocean and caused the water to froth and foam. From the foam, the fully grown figure of Aphrodite had appeared. This was supposed to have happened near the island of Cythera. Yeah, Cythera. Aphrodite was carried in a giant cyclops shell to the shores of Cyprus, where she was met by the seasons in the form of beautiful girls who gave her clothes and jewels to wear. Doves and sparrows flocked around her and became her special birds. Aphrodite was the goddess of love, and she existed purely to be beautiful and adored, and she had no other duties, as most of the immortals did. She had a magical girdle that made whoever wore irresistibly attractive to other people. Perhaps it was because of this that Adonis and Paris preferred Aphrodite to even other goddesses. Aphrodite's marriage. Zeus decided that Aphrodite should marry his son, Hephaestus, the smith god. He was strong but coarse and born lame. He worked in the god's forge, making weapons and jewelry. Aphrodite could not have her pick of men or gods, and so she was not pleased with Zeus's choice and had many lovers. The most famous of Aphrodite's lovers among the gods was Ares, god of war. Hephaestus did not like his wife's behavior and decided to teach her a lesson. He forged a net of bronze links and hung it above her bed, so when the lovers were next to each other, he dropped the net over them and caught them like fish. He called the other gods to come to see how ridiculous they looked. He forgave Aphrodite, though she was so beautiful that he could not be angry with her for so long. And then the next myth is called Aphrodite and Adonis. Aphrodite and Persephone, which is another goddess of spring. Oh, thank you, Arrow. I'm doing great. Goddess of spring. Both fell in love with a handsome human called Adonis. He preferred Aphrodite, and Persephone was jealous. She told Ares that Aphrodite was an ordinary man more than himself. Ares was furious and turned himself into a boar. He chased Adonis and gored him to death, where his blood fell and the first eninoms grew. I think those are flowers. Adonis was sent to the underworld, where Persephone was queen. Aphrodite begged Zeus to let Adonis come back, and he granted a compromise. He must stay in the underworld during the winter, but this summer he could visit the earth and be with Aphrodite. It was an interesting telling of the myth. I don't remember necessarily that last part, but yeah. Ooh, let's talk about Athena, who's one of my favorites. So, Athena was the maiden goddess of wisdom and war. She oversaw the safety of the state and was the most important goddess after Hera. There are many different versions of Athena's birth, but this is the most frequent one. Zeus fell in love with Metis, a titaness of wisdom. She was expecting a baby when Zeus heard a prophecy that any child Metis had would be greater than its father. Zeus could not permit this, so he turned Metis into a fly and swallowed her, as you do. This is how Zeus gained his great wisdom from Metis. Later, Zeus was walking by Lake Triton in Libya when he developed a terrible headache. He ordered Hephaestus to crack his skull open, which the smith god, as he knew he could not harm an immortal. From the split appeared a female figure in full armor. Zeus introduced her as his daughter, Athena. Athena inherited Metis' wisdom and preferred to settle disputes by reasoning. If she was forced to fight, though, she was invincible as the god of war. She took care of Zeus's shield, the Aegeus, and other battles gear. The owl was her special bird, and she was the patroness of the olive crop and capital city of Greece, Athens. Pallas and Athena. When she was young, Athena had a great friend, Pallas. One day, they were practicing with their spears when Athena killed her friend by accident. To show her sorrow, she then put her friend's name before her own and was afterwards known as Pallas Athena, which is a type of, as you do, which is a type of epithet. We can do the naming of Athens. Athena and Poseidon quarreled over the naming of the greatest town in Greece. At last they agreed that whoever could give the town the best gift should also name it. Poseidon dug his trident into the ground, which the town stood, and gushed out a stream, giving access to the sea so it could become rich and powerful through trade. Athena created the olive tree as her gift. It provided food and oil to the inhabitants and made them rich through exports, and so it was judged the better gift, and the town was named Athens after her. A special shrine was built to Athens on the Acropolis, the hill above Athens. It was called the Parthenon, from the word Parthenos, meaning maiden, which is another one of Athena's name. So ever heard the name Athena Parthenos, which is a old lost statue? That's where it comes from, the Parthenon, which is a big temple in Greece, and it still exists in ruins. That still exists. Mostly just like the outdoor outline of it, but you can still see it in Athens today. I want to see it. It's very cool. Apollo and Artemis. Also ones of my favorites. Apollo and Artemis were the twin children of Zeus and the Titaness Leto. Artemis was a goddess of the moon and hunting, and protected the wild animals. Apollo was the sun god and patron of the arts. The raven was his special bird. Both Apollo and Artemis were associated with the woodland. The birth of Artemis and Apollo. Zeus tried to keep his affair with Leto a secret, but Hera was not fooled. She sent a giant snake, Python, after poor Leto, who ran until she collapsed. The south wind then lifted her over the island of Orthygia. Here Artemis was born. She then grew up instantly and helped Leto across the island to Delos, where she gave birth. Muses. The Oracle of Apollo. Apollo hunted down Python that had chased his mother. He killed it at Delphi, and a huge temple was built to him there. He gave his priestess the gift of telling the future. Through the prophecies or oracles were famous throughout Greece. And so that's how the Oracle of Delphi happened. I'm just looking for other myths. Maybe some mankind. Zeus's affairs. Perseus. Oh, we could do the story of yes. Okay, we'll do the story of Perseus. Perseus and his okay. Uh, here's the beginning. I'm sorry. So we start with a story of Perseus' mother, Diana. King Greek names Archesius was warned by an oracle that he would be killed by his grandson. He locked his daughter, Diana, in a tower so she could never marry and have children. He could not keep he could not keep her away from Zeus, though. He entered her as a shower of gold, and Diana soon then had her son, Perseus. Odysseus could not bear to kill them, despite the oracle, so he set them adrift in a boat. Zeus guided the boat safely to the island of Seriphos. And this is where we continue the story of Perseus. Perseus and his mother, Diana, landed on the island of Seriphos, where they were looked by and after King Polydectes. King Polydectes challenged. Later, Polydectes tried to persuade Diana into marrying him. She refused. He felt like she might change her mind if her son went away. So he teased Perseus for preferring his mother's company and doing compared to doing brave deeds like other young men. He said Perseus should prove his courage by killing Medusa the Gorgon. Medusa had been turned into a hideous monster by Athena. She had snakes instead of hair, and anyone who looked at her was turned to stone. She also had two sisters who were also monsters called the Gorgons. So Athena had created Medusa. As Athena had created Medusa, she decided to help Perseus kill her. She gave him a shining shield and told him to only look at Medusa's reflection, never directly at her. Hermes then gave him a sickle sent from the nymphs in the underworld to borrow Hades' helmet of invisibility. They also gave him a magic wallet and winged sandals. Perseus sought Medusa out and attacked her with his magic weapons. He watched her in the polished shield and managed to cut off her head, which he put in the magic wallet. He escaped on his winged sandals. Flying home, Perseus saw a beautiful princess chained to a rock and fell in love. This was Andromeda. Andromeda. Her parents had boasted that she was lovelier than the sea nymphs, and so Poseidon had flooded their lands. To appease him, Andromeda was to be sacrificed to the sea monster. Perseus waited for the monster and killed it. He then freed Andromeda and married her. When they returned to Seriphos, Polydectes was about to force Diana into marriage. Outraged, Perseus held up Medusa's head, and the king looked at it and was turned to stone. One day Perseus took part in some important games. He threw a discus and was caught by the wind and accidentally killed an old man. This proved to be Odysseus, his own grandfather, who he had not seen since birth. The tragedy had been foretold by an oracle and was unavoidable. And that is the story of Perseus. And yeah. Wait and three. We can do Orpheus and Eurydice. Um, yeah. Page. Orpheus was the best musician in Greece. When he returned from his travels with Jason, he married his beloved Eurydice, Eurydice, Eurydice. Soon after, she died of a snake bite. Orpheus then went into the underworld to beg Hades to free her. He played with such sweet music on his lyre that Hades was charmed and agreed to let uh, Eurydice go, if Orpheus could lead her from his kingdom without looking back. Orpheus set foot, and Eurydice followed, but the temptation to turn around was too great. He looked too soon and lost her for good. Orpheus was so unhappy that he forgot to make sacrifices to Dionysus, and Dionysus called the Meandes soon then killed him. He was then uh, buried at the foot of Mount Olympus, and the birds were said to sing more sweetly than anywhere else. Orpheus then joined Eurydice in Hades, and his lyre became the group of stars called the Lyra. More page flipping. You can do Paris, Helen, and Troy. Greece and Troy were traditional rivals, according to legend. Their quarreling finally led to a long, bitter war. This started with the love story of Paris and Helen, which you can read about it below. So yeah, Paris was the son of King Priam and Queen Hecuba of Troy. At his birth, it was predicted that he would cause the downfall of Troy, so he was left to die on a hill. He was saved by a she-bear who fed him her milk until he was found by herdsmen who cared for him. Um, then later, at a wedding of a king and a sea nymph. A wedding of a king and a sea nymph, Thetis and Peleus. Um, basically, oh hello, son. She'd join. Um, I'm reading Greek myths, so that's how this is going. Um, yeah, sorry. Wedding of Thetis and Peleus. They got together, and then basically Eris, the goddess of spite, took revenge on for not being invited to the wedding. Eris had arrived during the feast with an apple inscribed "For the fairest." Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all reached for it, but Zeus did not want to choose between them, imagining the fury of the two not chosen. He decided that someone else must judge and picked Paris. Paris was guarding his foster father's sheep when Hermes arrived with the goddesses and asked Paris to choose the loveliest. Each goddess tried to bribe Paris, Hera with power and wealth, Athena with great victories and wisdom, but Aphrodite just smiled and promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world if he chose her. Paris could not resist Aphrodite and gave her the apple, earning the hatred of Hera and Athena. Aphrodite was said the most beautiful woman in the world was Helen, and that she lived in the Greece court in Greece at the court of Menelaus of Sparta. She did not say that Helen was married to Menelaus. Soon after, Paris competed in some games in Troy and won more prizes than any Trojan prince. Afraid that someone might harm Paris out of jealousy, his foster father revealed to him who he really was. The Trojans welcomed him, forgetting the prophecy. Um, they tell the story a little out of order, so I'm trying to piece it together. Um, Basically, what happened next was that Paris then soon kidnapped Helen of Sparta to then become Helen of Troy. Menelaus was furious when Helen had disappeared, um, and knew that she had been kidnapped. had had been knew that Helen had been kidnapped. So Menelaus then asked his brother Agamemnon. I can never say his name correctly. Agamemnon. Anemone. Um, and asked Helen's former suitors to help her get her back from Troy. Now we can talk. um, the Trojan War. So the war was dragged on for 10 years, and the Greeks could not break into Troy, and the Trojans could not drive them off. Many heroes were killed on both sides. One great Trojan hero was Aeneas, Aphrodite's son, by Anchises. Anchises? Anchises? I think. He was wounded by Diomedes, and Aphrodite rushed in to help him. Diomedes stopped her and even dared graze her with his spear. In the end, Apollo carried him to Leto and Artemis, who healed him. And now it is time to talk about Achilles. The most famous Greek warrior was Achilles. He was one of the sons of Thetis and Peleus, who we talked about a little earlier. Achilles were So during the war, Achilles argued with Agamemnon over a over a slave wife which they had won in battle, and basically she was given to Achilles, and Achilles treated fairly, and basically gave her freedom. However, the time then Agamemnon then Agamemnon and Achilles then got into an argument and ended with Agamemnon stealing her away from Achilles. And due to this, Achilles left the battle sulking. The Greeks lost their heart and were driven back by the Trojan hero Hector and Priam's son. In desperation, the beloved Patroclus put on Achilles' armor and led an attack. He was not as skilled as Achilles, though, and the Trojans saw through his disguise, and Hector had killed him. Achilles was stricken with guilt and sorrow and plunged back into battle. He killed Hector and dragged his body around the city behind his chariot before letting the Trojans buy it back for burial. Paris emerged to avenge Hector's death and shot Achilles in the heel, which was said to be his only weak spot, and then killed him. So that's the Iliad, basically, is about the story of Achilles, which is very good. I need to read the entire Iliad, but have not yet. Now Vulcan. Adventures of Odysseus. Just looking. I'm just looking for another. Um, we could do a little bit of Odysseus. So Odysseus lived on the island of Ithaca with his wife, uh, Penelope, and his son Telemachus. He had been warned that if he went to Troy, he would not return for 20 years. He tried to avoid going, but it was no use, as he warned to help Menelaus. Uh, Odysseus fought at Troy for 10 years, and it was his idea for the wooden horse that ended the war. His journey home was full of mishaps and were recounted in Homer's poem, The Odyssey. First, his ship was separated from the rest of the ships in a storm. It was washed up on a land of lotus eaters. Eating the lotus fruit made you forget everything except the desire to eat more fruit. Some sailors succumbed and had to be dragged back to the ship. They then called, excuse me, they then called at the island of the Cyclops, excuse me, Polyphemus, Polyphemus, who shut them in a cave with his sleep and began to eat them one by one. The sheep went out to graze each morning, but the giant never let a man slip out too. Eventually, Odysseus found a stick and used it to blind Polyphemus while he slept. When the sheep went out the next morning, the men clung to their bellies. The blind Cyclops could feel each sheep to make no one had escape on their backs, but did not think to feel underneath. When he discovered this trick, Polyphemus then asked Poseidon to avenge him. Not long after, the crew were entertained by Aeolus, guardian of the winds. He tied the storm winds in a bag and gave them to Odysseus to keep. His foolish men thought the bag contained treasure and opened it, releasing a tempest. They had driven into this word is literally all vowels. It's A-E-A-E-A. Aya? A? Aya? Not quite sure. One of those two. Three. I don't know. Home of Circe, a witch. She turned unwanted visitors into pigs. Aya. Aya. um, she turned unwanted visitors into pigs, and this was the fate of sent for help by Odysseus. Hermes gave Odysseus flowers that made him immune to Circe's spells. He demanded the release of his men. Circe was impressed by his boldness and fell in love with him. She restored his men, and they stayed there for a while. She had 3 sons with Odysseus, though he remained keen on going home. Circe sent him to the underworld to consult Tiresias about his future. The seer warned him that when he got home, he would find men fighting for his goods. They finally left Aea, sailing safely past the sirens by blocking their ears with wax, except for Odysseus, who wanted to hear their voices. He had tied himself to the mast, so he could not be lured over to them. Still, the dangers were not over. They had to negotiate, not negotiate. They had to negotiate. I can't read apparently. Sorry, y'all. Negotiate a narrow channel between 2 monsters. It was almost impossible to avoid. One was Scylla, who had 6 heads and snapping dogs at her waist. The other was the whirlpool, uh, big whirlpool scary monster thingy, which sunk ships into their doom. Odysseus had chosen the path nearer to Scylla and just got by, though she killed some of his men. Close enough, lol. On Sicily, the sailors killed and ate some of the cattle of the Titan Hyperion. Thraces had warned Odysseus not to harm these sacred animals and anger the gods, and the angry god sank his ship, drowning almost all the men. Odysseus survived by clinging to the mast. He then washed up on um, the island of Calypso. She stopped Odysseus leaving stopped Odysseus leaving for 7 years, until Zeus sent Hermes to make her let him go. At last, he reached the shores of Ithaca and entered his court, disguised as an old man. He found things Odysseus had predicted. The nobles were squandering his wealth and trying to make Penelope remarry. She knew that if Odysseus was dead right now, it'd be wise to accept one of them, but she delayed choosing, claiming she must finish her weaving first. She wove all day and then undid her work that night. This was a ruse that was eventually discovered, and she was forced to complete the cloth. Odysseus then revealed his true identity to his son, Telemachus, and they secretly removed all the nobles' weapons from the hall. Penelope said that she would marry the man who could string the bow Odysseus had left behind and shoot an arrow. She was sure no one could do it. The suitors tried but failed. Odysseus then came forward. They laughed at the old man, but he easily strung the bow and shot the arrow, realizing who he must be. Then they reached for the weapons, only to find they were all gone. Odysseus had no pity, and he killed them all. Odysseus settled down again with his family, but one day, um, um, oh yeah, there's this random story that's like at the very tack end. Odysseus settled down with his family, but one day a strange ship arrived. Odysseus attacked, thinking they were raiders. He was killed in a fight, and only afterward it was discovered that the strangers were led by his own son, one of Circe's children. Which is a weird story that no one really talks about. But that did happen, apparently, according to some people. um, didn't learn that in American history. And I think that's all the big stories in this. Then at the very end, they have a very, very, very long, like dictionary for all the Greek gods and goddesses, immortals and creatures. With ways to actually say their names. Ooh, let's look. Fun fact. Oh wait, no. Charybdis. Charybdis is how you pronounce the whirlpool monster. Fun fact. The real way you're supposed to say Circe is actually Kirke, because in ancient Greek there was no C, there was just K's. So Kirke was her real name. Um, Big yawn. Um, I think that's all this book has to offer. Um, if anyone in chat Where's the story time? I just finished the story time. You just missed it. Um, if anyone in chat wants to ask questions about Greek mythology, I can give my educated answer about it. Do it again. Besides, um, hello, Lego Craft. I send a heart too. Um, I recently read the novel Song of Achilles. It's very good. Highly recommend if you are older than the age of 18. Like 17, 18. Um, I'm Brand. I'm a mod on Arrow server and also a friend. I'm not Arrow. um, who were Zeus's children? Um, Zeus had many, 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 many children. His godly children was Ares, god of war, Hephaestus, god of weapon making and smithing, blacksmithing. Dionysus, god of wine, Hermes, god of traveling, Apollo, archery, prophecy, light, Artemis, goddess of the hunt, Athena, goddess of warfare, also. And I think those were the main elements that he was the father of. Um, oh, Song of Achilles. Yeah, Song of Achilles is about um, it's about Achilles and Patroclus. Um, and it's basically their story from childhood up to the and it's shorter. It's only like it's under 400 pages. I think it's like 370, somewhere around there. Um, does he sing in it? And um, he plays the lyre in it and hums. I don't know. I forget if he fully sings in the book. Um, but he does play the lyre in it. Um, and it's very good. I give it a 10 out of 10. But I do you fucking liar. I do recommend it if you are interested in retellings. It's a retelling of the Iliad. But the author is a classicus, meaning that she had like studied in ancient Greek and Roman mythology for like years. Who was Hercules' parents? Hercules' parents. Well, actually, no. Hercules is a Roman name of Heracles. So Heracles is the Greek, and Heracles' parents was Zeus, and I'm forgetting his mother's name. She was immortal. I think was it Thebes? No, Mycenae. I forget where Heracles is from. It was like a. Do I look? Almost too lazy to look, but just for you guys, I'll look if I can find it. It might take a bit. But Heracles was a demigod. And I'm not finding. I have to look for. Alchem Alcmene. Alcmene was Heracles' mother. Um, and yeah, Heracles, the name, means glory of Hera, because to protect him from Hera, Zeus named him that, although that did not work, and Hera still made him go mad and put him through a bunch of stuff. I played Harry, so I guess I like Greek myths and God of War. Speak Greek? I do not know Greek, personally. That's a bad word, Arrow. Can't say that. I can, but um, do I know anything about Egyptian mythology and or Norse? I know little bits. I do not know as much as I know about Greek. Um, Mostly because the names are even more harder to pronounce. And when I see a name I can't pronounce, my brain just goes blank. So it's hard to read. But I do know bits and pieces. I know the mythology surrounding like Loki and Thor and Odin, roughly. I know in Egyptian mythology about Ra. I really only know Ra. I know Thoth. Um, Mythology is really weird because in the grand scheme of things, Egypt has lasted thousands of years longer than Greece ever did and does. So the Egyptian mythos is way more mystified and like um hard to have concrete mythology about. I watch anime, I gotta know Japanese. I would like to learn Greek, um, but learning a new language is difficult. I know bits and pieces of Spanish. um, I can get that much. Okay, it's oh, the sun god Anubis is the god of death. Loki was gender fluid. That is true. Loki did change his gender multiple times throughout the mythology. He also was the mother of eight-legged horse whose father was a horse. The stream lag is bad. Rut-row. Arrow's lagging a bit. Trickster, that one is. Yep. Not complicated at all. Yeah, Loki is the trickster god in Norse mythology. Um, I like it's he's tied to a story about Ragnarok, which is the Norse end of the world. Well, the end of this world, per se. The Norse had cyclical worlds where one would end and a new one would begin, and this one would end at Ragnarok. Um, and Loki would bring about Ragnarok because currently he's in the Roman equivalent of the underworld, which I believe is just known as Hell, but just spelled with one L. It's either that or that's the goddess who rules the Norse underworld. I forget which one. Yeah, I've seen Thor. I get the gist. Um, um, and basically Loki is trapped down there, and there's like poison being spilled into his eyes. It's a whole thing. You just get a mythology script and read it to us. Maybe another stream, possibly. That could be an idea. Hope Ragnarok happens soon. So I need a reason to move. Um, I like saying the word Ragnarok, See, I can say that, and it sounds cool. Ragnarok. Um, can't say half the other Norse words though. They're very consonant heavy.